You're listening to the Believe in Giants podcast with two-time Super Bowl winner Carl Banks and the voice of the Giants, Bob Papa.
And we welcome you to another edition of Believe in Giants presented by FanDuel. Bob Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks. So, Carl, the mandatory minicamp is in the books for 2026 as the Giants got some work in on the field. You were out there. Your former teammates, Lawrence Taylor and Harry Carson, were out there on Monday. Your observations on what you saw of this John Harbaugh team?
Well, they're working hard and they're working long. The players are all saying to a man that this is their hardest they've ever worked, but they all seem to be embracing it. And I think that is a beautiful thing because they're actually now crossing the threshold into what playoff caliber teams, and I'm not talking from a talent standpoint, and we can talk about that another time because they do have talent on this team, but they're crossing into that threshold of the work that's required to be a competitive and playoff contending team. And that's why these guys are saying, wow, this is as hard as we've ever worked. Well, they're working to a different standard now, the standard that has, Harbaugh with this great winning percentage and this great playoff run. He knows what it takes to compete his way, and these players have adopted that, and embraced it because it's different. It's a different threshold that they've crossed over into. The way that their conditioning, the way they go about their practices, the way they're being coached, it's different. And, from the new players to the veteran players on this roster, they haven't worked like this before. And it's different, but they've embraced it. And it's something that I think will yield great results for them.
And it is called practice for a reason, right? Being out there for a couple of days, standing on the sideline, watching it. Hey, there were mistakes that were made, but that's going to happen when you practice. That's why you practice. There's communication. There's understanding the concepts of what they're doing defensively. They're understanding new coaches, making calls. So I don't get wrapped up too much in the actual end result of a lot of things because, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. This is part of installing and getting ready for, as John Harbaugh said yesterday, this is the runway to training camp, right? I mean, listen, Ben Sauls has had a rough couple days kicking the football. The other kicker has made every kick. Sauls has made 50%. Harbaugh pulled him aside yesterday after he missed a couple. And he's missing them all to the left. So Harbaugh talked about this yesterday with the media. It's a technique issue. These are the things you're going to have to fix up and clean up as we get ready for training camp. So I think sometimes we get a little caught up in the results of a OTA or a mandatory minicamp, but this is not where the results count. This is where you learn from mistakes, right?
It is. But it works both ways, right? You talked about, mistakes are made. The one thing that stood out to me is that mistakes are corrected in real time. They don't wait for the film. I'm sure they do more of it in film, but if there's a mistake on the field, they are correcting it. They're talking about it. And then there are other instances, Bob, where if you blow a coverage or if you blow a procedural penalty, they pull you out of the rep. There was and I've seen it a few times on the defensive side and offensive side where if there's a procedural situation or if there's a blown coverage, they pull you out for the rep. Now they coach you up while you're out, but it's just like their margin for mistakes is just not as lenient as it has been in the past. It's not one of those, well, we'll go over it in the film. Let's keep the drill running. they keep practice running, but they pull you out if there's something that obviously they've been teaching and they've been harping on, and then you don't execute it the way they want it. They pull you out of the rep.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback was working on a hard count. Somebody jumped. You lose your rep. Out you go. In comes somebody else. And for all those guys that are running with the 2s and the 3s and the 4s, your reps are unbelievably valuable. So if you have a mental error and you get pulled out and you lose that rep, you got to wait a while until you get your next rep.
Yeah. And so, but when it comes to kickers, they do chart those right now. Stalls is, they're going to coach him up and they're talking about a technique issue. But if the other guy is making all of his and they get to camp and you haven't corrected the issue, they're not going to have the patience to say, well, we'll ride it out with you. We saw what happens when you ride it out in your kicking game last year and the year before. It cost you football games. And I think given Coach Harbaugh's background and his origins as a special teams coach, he understands the importance of that because they put a lot of time. That 2-hour practice yesterday and the day before, they put a lot of time into special teams and they coach it. Like, these are not guys, one special teams coach trying to coach. It's all the position coaches. They're coaching their special teams.
They had an NFL officiating crew in for the 2 days too. So that was kind of cool to have, NFL officials in your mini camp. It's good rep for the officials. It's good for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for the players. You can't sweet talk your way out of it with some of the guys that you have like every week during practice. The guys that you see every week. These are game officials, and then they explain, like, this is what we see. This is how we're calling it. I know the officials spoke with the team as well about rule emphasis coming up for this season. But, there's so many little details to all of this. There was something that happened in practice yesterday. They were doing 7-on-7 goal to goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought you would like this because Arvell Reese, he's lined up at inside backer, and he does his pattern read. And I don't pretend to understand exactly what he was looking at, but he identified everything. And then at the last second, he sunk into the end zone and he knocked away a pass intended for the tight end. And I was like, that was interesting to watch him instinctively because, we all get caught up in the guys being able to come off the edge, who can generate pressure, who can do this. But there's a lot more to playing linebacker than just being able to go get after a quarterback. And it was just kind of interesting watching him being coached up and watching him process what he was seeing and then reacting to it easily and knocking away a pass that looked like it was targeted for a touchdown.
Yeah, so the operative word there is linebacker, Bob, and people get caught up, like you said, and they confuse linebacker with edge. He was drafted as a will linebacker. He has linebacker skill sets. He's a multiple skill set player, but his job that he's learning, that he's going to start day one with, is inside linebacker. And that's what inside linebackers do. And that's refreshing to see that you have guys, and I was talking to Joe Shane a little bit about it as well, that you have guys that actually play the position of linebacker. And linebacker, as I've known it, is not the guy who just purely rushes the passer. They do a multitude of things. And so when you draft a guy like that, when all of the draft analysts are projecting him to be, a steal as a pass rusher, he's worthy of being, an edge rusher, and that's why he's drafted. No, he was drafted because he's a linebacker in today's game that's greatly necessary and needed in the Giants ecosystem. They did not have good linebackers Now they've got two that can play the pass and that can play the run. Now, Tremaine Edmonds has a ton of interceptions as a linebacker. So this is what they brought him here for, to utilize his complete skill set, but his core position is inside linebacker.
Yeah, and he had one yesterday. I was talking with somebody that sits in the team meeting every morning, and this person's been around football for a long time, and he said to me, man, his meetings are amazing. His morning meetings are amazing. I said, well, give me an example, having never sat in the meetings. And he's like, he's succinct. He lays out a foundation for what needs to be done for the day. And then he has some video to supplement it with players and examples. And he said, everything is positive because the conversation, you know how it is during training camp and mini camps and stuff like that. We all stand on the sideline. There's staff members there, people within the organization, and there's all kinds of chit chat, right? You were chit chatting yesterday as part of standing there, right? You know what I mean? That's what you do. And so the topic came up. Has anyone seen Harbaugh blow his stack yet? And the answer was no. Now, hey, when they get to training camp, might there be a time? But as someone pointed out, when he gets upset, he has a way of using voice inflection to convey it without like going off the rails.
Sure.
And then using something in a positive way to get the same message across that another coach might feel the need to, kind of lose his mind a little bit.
Sure.
That's his style. It's going to be interesting to see how it evolves over the course of the year. But it doesn't seem to me, Carl, that he's going to vary from his recipe, which is be himself and not try to be something that he's not.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it was at the town hall when you guys were interviewing Isaiah Likely, or maybe it was one of John Schmelk's interviews with him. He talked about, no, it was in the green room. Phil Simms and I were together, and we heard him tell the story about, and Coach Harbaugh was there in the green room with us at the town hall, and Likely said, Coach has a way to get a message across, and it hits as hard as if he were screaming. Like, if you blow an assignment, you might get a text message after coach has seen the film and says, what were you thinking on this assignment? Or, hey, did you get a chance to look at X play? And Likely's like, he screwed it up. Coach didn't scream at him in the moment, like other than, hey, we got to get this right. But then he goes and watches film, texts the player, and the player, and Likely was, he alluded to the fact that it's like, it hits different because coach can get his point across and that you screwed it up. He makes sure you screwed it up without, doing the whole berating thing. So he has a particular style. He's a teaching style, but he's dealing with grown men and they understand the expectations. And like you said, he has the voice inflection, or he has a communication style that articulates, the magnitude or the importance of what he's trying to get done.
It's almost like he wants to challenge you intellectually. And as he's challenging you, he's telling you he knows and that you could be better at whatever.
Yes.
And he gets that message across in that way.
Yes. But never lose sight of the fact that he's a coach's son and he can get after you, but he just doesn't, he's not overtly demonstrative, but if you listen to his enthusiasm in meetings and when he talks to his team, and you can look at his brother too, Jim, they get really excited about things. They love the game, and who's got it better than us? Nobody, is what his brother Jim used to always lead his team with. But that's the enthusiasm that they've taken on from their father as a coach. Same type of enthusiasm. So they figure, they know how to do this and motivate men.
I want to ask you about the wide receiver room because they've got a bunch. JuJu Smith-Schuster had a couple of good days of practice. I like what I've seen out of Odell. He caught a long ball yesterday on a busted coverage and was able to score. What do you think about the competition here and what you're seeing? Obviously, Neighbors is not on the field. He's not ready to go. I really like what I've seen out of Calvin Austin. But, did you get any sense when you watched the wide receivers of anything that struck you?
Well, there's going to be competition. As long as Odell Beckham is not having a bad day, he's going to be one of the best guys out on the field. He, again, just watching him in team and then in individual stuff, he can manipulate coverage. He can manipulate a defender with his moves that, is at an elite level. Like he hasn't lost that. May not be 4-4, but he's good enough and fast enough to manipulate defenders, and he's a pro's pro. Mooney, Austin, JuJu, look, I think they all understand that this is an opportunity for them to compete. We haven't seen Slayton out there, but he's going to be a part of this group. And again, you've got to get with Malik out, you got to find out who your three guys are. And when he comes back, there'll be 4 receivers in rotation. And these guys are all vying for 2, 3, and 4, or maybe 3 and 4 with Darius Slayton there. And, again, I never doubt Darius Slayton because I know his work ethic and I know what he's, what drives him. But at the end of the day, and I was just having this conversation with some other folks, he was a 5th round draft choice. He earned his contract, but as a 5th round draft choice, you got to make the team every year as well. And what happened is we raised our expectations for Darius Slayton once he started to have some success. And then he kind of played down to a level of a 5th rounder, with the inconsistent catches. And now people were upset with him. And I'm like, well, maybe we need to level set and see, where he actually is. But, I don't think he's lowered his expectations. I think he expects to catch footballs and he wants to do that. And if he can get back to that level of consistency, he's gonna be a reliable guy because he can get open. He's got his average yards per catch is among the tops in the league. But the operative word here is catch. And he didn't have a great year catching the ball last year, and that is part of your core job description as a wide receiver. It's not blocking, it's receiving.
Right.
That's the number one requisite, that you have to be able to catch, and you have to do it consistently. So I trust that he will bounce back from that, and he will be one of their more stable receivers. He won't be their go-to guy, and he's never was supposed to be. But, with injury and everything else, he had to step up. He did. He prepares well. He works hard. He just has to be reliable when they call his number, and he'll get his number called. And speaking of bounce back, I'll tell you another guy that I've really seen practice well is Tay Banks. I think the joy is back into playing. He got a nice interception yesterday, high pointed a ball. But you could just observing him, there seems to be a joy back into playing. And I don't know if it's the scheme that Denard Wilson's running. It's similar to Wink Martindale. But maybe it's the communication with him as well. And maybe he's gotten, had some time to really spend with what he wants to get out of his career. If there were personal issues going on, which I've heard some things about, but I'm not at liberty to say because I don't know for a fact. But if those things are, stabilized in his life, and when I talk personal, folks, I'm not talking about drugs or anything like that, but if he's gotten
personal lives like
head.
all of us have. Personal lives like all of us have away from our job.
Yeah, I'm not talking about anything that's of a criminal nature or the illegal nature. But, he seems to be in a great place mentally, and he seems to have the joy back into what he does. And, I talked about this in the offseason earlier after the season was over. I said I'd be shocked if this kid allows his career to be defined as a glorified kick and punt returner. And you see him out there now, it's just moving with a different bounce.
I don't want to dwell on it, but when we were talking about the receivers, I've been very impressed so far from what I've seen out of Malachi Fields, who brings a different body type to the table. And I think he's going to have a chance to blossom within this offense. But Carl, the defensive side of the ball, that's the $1 million question. There were so many opportunities last year where the defense could have closed out games in which the offense scored enough points to win. I mean, I know it's early. I know we haven't gotten to any preseason games. I know we haven't gotten to any joint practices yet. But what's your feel just in talking with people and what you've seen with your eyes of what you think this Denard Wilson defense wants to become?
They're going to be aggressive. What I am seeing in the defensive front, obviously with Roy Robinson out, they're probably going to need to add another big at some point during training camp that is going to be in rotation. But, you got Reeder, Harris, Roberts, and Darius Alexander has really started to build on that last quarter of
Looks
the
like
season.
He's matured a little bit, Carl. Looks like he's matured a little bit watching him out there.
Yeah, he's not a young kid anyway, but he is.
No, I meant mature as a player, not
as
growing up
from technique and the way he moves like a pro. And you saw that in the last quarter of the season. You could start to see that coming along. It was starting to get it, as they say, as a pro. And you got all this raw ability, and you see some good things, and you see some inconsistencies, and all of a sudden the good things start to kind of step over the inconsistency. You say, okay, now he gets it. I saw that with him. But here's my concern, and it's cornerback. I think they're going to be fine. They got a lot of good players there, and they seem to be getting after it. And it's a concern only because I haven't seen them in action. Safety. I want to know if Tyler Nubin has really, and it's not just a Tyler thing, it's a coaching thing in terms of his technique as a safety and the angles that he takes, right? Because, we talked about it every week, a safety taking bad angles. And, and I saw one play yesterday where he's the backside pursuing, and he ends up in a foot race when he had a head start. And I don't know if he throttled down or whatever, but I would really, if I'm looking at film with him, and I know he's gotten more of this angle stuff correct it than not, I would tell him to overcorrect every single rep. Don't take any rep off. Don't develop any bad habits. So, and I'm not saying that I'm looking at every rep and he's doing, he's taking bad angles, but I just saw this one rep. It was a running play. It got through the line of scrimmage. He pursued. He was at a great angle. And I don't know if he throttled down or not, but he ended up in a foot race with, the running back coming through the line of scrimmage. And I'm just saying, don't develop that bad habit. Get to the point of attack at the right angle because you took the right angle to begin with. I'm seeing him pursue the ball. And then I'm like, overcorrect, sir. You don't have the luxury of saying, I got it. Right? You got to do it every time. Overcorrect that so that you not find yourself falling back into things that just made you a bad tackler last year because you just couldn't get yourself in position to make plays. So what I'd like to see from Tyler Nubin is the same thing over and over and over, not do it a lot to show, yeah, he's figured it out now. He's taking good angles. But from a coaching standpoint and from an individual player standpoint, I would emphasize overcorrect. Everything you do, your angles you've been doing it here this offseason. I don't want to see one rep where you throttle down and make me think that you're falling back into a bad habit. I want you to show you're in position every single rep. So that's an area where I just want to see this young man blossom into why they drafted him, because he just has not gotten to the point to where we were excited when he was drafted because he's great ball skills and center fielding and all of that other stuff because of the angles that he takes. So I want to see that. I want to just erase last year out of my head. And then Javon Holland, I just, he's got a lot of things going for him. I just want to see what they are, right? I know he's a super smart kid. They were all, that group last year were just, non-distinguishable. I don't see the distinguishing characteristics in that group. Now, you brought up to me yesterday a guy that we know that'll take a good angle and will play some good safety for this team, and he's back, and that's Jason Pinnock. Pinnock
he's going to take a good angle.
He's going to take good angles, and he's going to make some plays for you. So hopefully Pinnock pushes these guys, but they were indistinguishable last season. And I want to see this group make an impact. I think the corners will make an impact just from the aggressive nature that they play, this scheme will play. And the linebackers, and I know from a production standpoint, what they want to get accomplished with their guys up front, and I think they will. It's going to be a front seven. I want to see from the safeties, and this is not doom and gloom now. I'm just saying this is where what I'd like to see as a build-up into the season. They're just an undistinguishable group.
Well, listen, there's a combination of things that could be factors here. And again, this is OTA practices. Mandatory minicamp, veteran minicamp is part of the OTAs, right? Mm-hmm. But I will say this. I noticed Paulson and Debo, it feels like more in the last 2 days than I noticed the most of last season in practice and obviously in the games. It felt like Newsome had a presence. I saw Hood out there competing. Mm-hmm. From the corner standpoint, Phillips, I felt like I noticed them more. Now, again, the defense is always ahead of the offense in these situations. we know how that goes. Even at the start of training camp, the defense is always ahead of the offense. The offense takes more time to get up to speed and everything else. And maybe this is the new scheme, but it certainly felt to me like I'm watching Paulson and Debo make plays, and for a second, I was looking at him and I was like, I was trying to think back to training camp last year. I don't remember seeing any of this.
Right.
So
Right. I think, he was up and down last year, but it's the system, right? And obviously, their defensive coordinator last year just didn't get the job done. Hence, that's why they have a new staff now. But this, again, they're being coached up. They've got a really bright defensive coordinator who understands how to put players in positions to really execute the style of play. So that's why we see guys flashing now. I'm not at all surprised. It does kind of validate the free agency signing. Now, Debo had some injuries he dealt with last year, which was part of that inconsistent play. But again, it's, they were bad. They were a bad team last year, and, a bad scheme. And individually, guys couldn't overcome a bad scheme, and that is not a good sign either. You got to have some players that will stand out regardless of what your scheme is, and they didn't have that. But I'm glad to see and hear that he is being very active out there.
All right. Anything else to get off your chest here before we wrap it up? Any news with Starter? We got anything going extra with that, or are we all locked in production, ready for the 40th celebration?
We are ready for the 40th anniversary. We got another drop happening. Well, not until opening day, but if you guys haven't gotten the locker room tee, go to shopgiants.com or go through the Giants shop and get that, because they're almost sold out too. That was our official Super Bowl locker room tee.
All right, Carl, how do you like to end this thing?
We do have another big announcement, starter announcement that's NFL related, but non-Giants, and you'll probably hear that news soon. But how we like to end this thing? Tell a friend to tell a friend. Believe in Giants.
Believe in Giants.